Welcome, everyone, to the James Reagan podcast. I am your host and the biggest James Reagan fan of all time. I'm James Reagan. I'm not going to pretend like this is a podcast with other people or a fan podcast. It's just me. And it's always just going to be me. So if your idea of a fun podcast is exclusively James Reagan on the James Reagan podcast, talking about James Reagan, then this is a podcast for you. If any of that sounds undesirable to you, then there are literally 5 billion other podcasts. Like, what do you want this to be? This is the James Reagan podcast. I'm just a comedian, and I really like talking with other comedians just to get their opinion on things. You know, maybe we'll do some jokes, something a little too edgy for the stage, but we're two comedians chatting, so you can't get mad at that. That's literally, that is every other podcast in the entire world, so this is not that. I am clearly not a comedian. At no point in this podcast will you be like, wait a second, am I listening to a comedian? Where's the other comedian? Aren't two comedians supposed to get together and talk about the joy of stand-up? No, you won't laugh at all during this entire podcast. Or the next episode of this podcast, or the next episode after that. This is going to be my bleak view of the world. Where, you know how people are like, work is such a drag, but I open up a spreadsheet and I just have to escape from that world, so I just throw on a podcast. Like, this podcast is going to be the auditory equivalent of working on a spreadsheet. Like, it's going to be tedious and it's going to try your nerves, and basically, I could have written the script for this podcast in a spreadsheet. It's that workmanlike and unfun. You're going to have to listen to a podcast while you listen to this podcast just to de-stress from this podcast. And I don't even really want to do this podcast. I know you're saying, oh, but Tom, you did that really great podcast about the plot holes in 90210. Or, oh, Tom, you did that really creepy podcast where you tried to gain the love of a girl you somehow found on the internet. And that's true. I did have those two podcasts, but this is now a third podcast where this one's going to be longer and it's going to be more focused on me. Because before, there were two things it was focusing on. 90210, the CW years, and me. Now we're taking 90210 for a side, unless I do a whole entire 90210 podcast, which is probably like a 98% chance of that happening. So if you're waiting for that, then just check back in 6 months. So I didn't want to start a podcast, and here we are with a podcast. The reason why I did that is we're past the halfway point of 2014, and I think certain realities can't be avoided. On Monday, I read for the first time ever, brick and mortar. Isn't mortar like what they put in like military rocket launchers or whatever? Where it's like, go get the mortar shells. Apparently they also build stores out of it. So these brick and mortar stores, for the first time ever, online book sales surpassed the sales of books being sold in bombs and or stores. And this shocked me. I couldn't believe this story when it came out. I was like, how is this possible? Because where the fuck is a bookstore? Show me where a bookstore is. Tell me where your favorite bookstore is. I mean, sure, there are always going to be those bookstores that are like the Strand or whatever, where they'll just exist as a bookstore where, you know, you'll go and you'll be like, I'm a indie movie character. I'm a guy who has a, job that could never support me living in New York City, but I'm a quirky indie character, so it's okay. Like, the Strand will exist so that indie characters can have minimum wage jobs that are desirable. Like, no one is cleaning up diarrhea when they work at the Strand. Like, no one diarrheas in the Strand. If they do have to diarrhea, they'll go into Subway, they'll buy a cookie, they'll diarrhea in the bathroom, and then they'll go to the Strand. Or, they'll go to the Strand first. It depends on how much they have to diarrhea. But basically what I'm saying is that there are very few brick and mortar bookstores left. I think we've bombed them all. The mortar shells hit the mortar bookstores and they're gone. I mean, I live in New Jersey and I think there's one bookstore I can think of. I think the Barnes & Noble on Route 3. But the Barnes & Noble on Route 3 have removed all their chairs. Except for in the coffee area. So you have to like go, find the book you want, go over, buy a Starbucks, sit down in the Starbucks, you can read the book, and then probably there's another requirement where like if you don't buy the book then you have to spend an hour restocking the shelves. Like that's what it's come to, where like it's like basically a book co-op, but a Barnes & Noble. That is a reality now that we have, where I'm writing these long-form pieces that are essentially like the brick and mortar, and I'm surprised when no one's reading, 8,000 words that I've written on some subject that people don't even want to talk about to me casually. So there's that is factoring in on this podcast. Also factoring in is the fact that today is July 2nd. Today is July 2nd, 2014. I released my first novel on July 2nd, 2013. Since then, I've released 2 books. The first one I released, called Famous for Nothing, it's a celebrity blogging satire about these socialites, where we'll get back to who inspired that book in a bit. The second book is Empire Waste. It's like a really, really personal book where it's the most personal writing I've ever done, and it's also about the fashion industry, but it's like 99.8% personal, 0.1% fashion industry, 0.1% lesbian succubus. So that, if that sounds good to you, you can check either of those books out. They're both in Amazon. They aren't in any brick and mortar stores. So I'm sorry if, you wanted to get a coffee, or if actually, like, when you think about it, the best way to combine diarrhea and books would be to just get it on Amazon, because on Amazon, you can diarrhea while you're making the purchase of my book. You can't do that in the Strand. If you start diarrheaing in the Strand while you're purchasing my book, people will be like, what is this man doing? If you purchase my book while you're diarrheaing from Amazon online, no one will question it. If you aren't diarrheaing and you've bought my book, then you're mismanaging your time. You should have bought it while you were diarrheaing. It's only a matter of time. So, getting back to the point of this. Today is July 2nd. It's the day my first book came out, which is about socialites and celebrities who, are heavy in the blogosphere, and it also happens to be Lindsay Lohan's birthday. Which, let's just get this, if I was going to record a podcast, I was going to mention Lindsay Lohan at some point within the first 10 minutes of the podcast. She's one of my favorite girls. I mean, she's in that same realm of, like, the Britney, always, no matter what they could do, I'll still be a huge fan. Like, when that last Britney Jean album came out, I was obsessive about it, where if you want to go to see essentially what's a podcast about the Britney album, except for it's a vlog, because I also had to show my physical joy that I was holding a copy of this, then you can search Britney Jean, the visual album, because also at the time I sort of had a big hang-up that the Beyonce visual album was outshining Britney's far superior album. So I decided to create the visual experience for Britney Jean, which was just me holding a copy of Britney Jean talking about how great life is. It's probably the only time you'll ever see me happy, so that's why I did it as a vlog. But Lindsay is in that category, the Britney category, where they can do no wrong. I'm so happy. I always want to talk about them. And Lindsay, back in 2013, had a movie coming out, which was rare, because most of the time I was talking about Lindsay's court cases in the 10 essays I wrote on her. So when this movie was coming out, I wanted to talk about it, but I'm a novelist. I'm 100% a novelist. I'm not like novelist / painter / blogger. Yeah, I guess a / blogger, but no one's going to actually admit that they're a blogger besides people who are like, oh, I'm a blogger. That's how you have to admit it. You can't even admit you're a blogger in your own voice. You have to, ooh, I'm a blogger. No one wants to do that. No one wants to come out as a blogger to their parents. Hey mom, visit my Tumblr. Follow me. Send me an ask. Send me an ask with the number sign correlating between which question about my butt you want me to answer. No, no one does that. So basically, I was a novelist with a lot of ideas that didn't fit into a novel, where I didn't want to write a short story about it. And so the only way to get it out of my system so that it wasn't polluting my actual work was to write an essay on it. And the one place that I wanted to land these essays is Vice. And it just so happens that recently on Vice, there's a piece by James Franco about Lindsay Lohan. Whether this piece is fictional or not, I think they call it fiction for legal reasons, blah, 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 whatever. But basically in the piece, if you go to Vice, it's called Bungalow 89. And in the piece, James Franco primarily talks about James Franco, which I'm okay with. I like that. I'm having a James Franco phase as well, because basically when you go to my Amazon page, it says like, people who purchase this book also purchase books from James Franco. And then as the list continues, it's only James Franco. Literally the only other author that's like related to me at all is James Franco. Like 100% of my fan base is a fan of James Franco, which in turn makes me a fan of James Franco because that's, the Kevin Bacon world, separation, degrees, all that garbage. So Vice runs this Franco piece, and the Franco piece is comprised of a couple different parts. First part of the Franco piece is the same part every Franco piece, where Franco looks out of Franco's room at a billboard of Franco. The Franco in the billboard stares back at the Franco not on the billboard, who's staring at the Franco billboard. That happens for a while. There's a good portion of that where he's just like, I'm a Gucci model. I'm not sure if you noticed. I'm a Gucci model. There's a giant billboard out there of me being a Gucci model, wearing Gucci. Got some trade. I'm in Gucci right now. These might be Gucci loafers. I haven't checked because Gucci sends me things and I just put them on my feet. Willy-nilly. Other companies also send me things too, so this could be any type of shoe besides a Reebok. I don't know, maybe... I just imagine that Reebok has a problem with James Franco. That just seems like a Reebok thing. But in Bungalow 89, there's the James Franco content. There's a part where James Franco talks about how he's BFF with Gus Van Sant. And then there's a part discussing Lindsay Lohan. And I really like this piece. I think it's great. I think it's a fun piece. And people shit on it so much because they don't want to be the person looking at James Franco on the billboard, because James Franco looking at James Franco is double James Franco beauty, and then they look like they look. Where there's never going to be a billboard of them unless it's for like, don't fuck your life up like this person. So, they got mad at it, but whatever. Basically, there's all this mismatch of just stuff. There's the different way people consume content, the anniversary of my first novel, Lindsay Lohan's birthday, the Lindsay Lohan Vice piece, and all of it seemed to signify that maybe a podcast was the right way for me to go. Maybe that's the way for me to get out my long-form writing. It's not the best way. I do think that the best way to consume what I've written is to read what I've written. Like, I don't do anything else. I don't write poems. I wrote that one poem about Daphne Hohenfeld, and she fucking quit the modeling industry because of it. I'm still ruined by it. My poetry fucking made Daphne Virginia Woolf her career. I'll never forgive myself for it. I'll never write another poem again. But my novels haven't really ruined anyone's life. Like, I always ruin someone's life and then write the novel about it. That's how I go about things. But so none of this bled into what I was doing. I had to write these essays, and I wanted to go to Vice. I thought Vice was cool. If you aren't familiar with Vice, Vice is like an online magazine. I don't know what they call it now. They basically have a bunch of different things where, like, one of them is just, I'm a vaguely good-looking guy, and here's a piece that I wrote about every girl I've ever sent a dick pic to, where it's like vaguely provocative, and people will be like, don't you have any standards anymore? Is nothing sacred? I liked reading about your dick, though. Cool piece. And there's that part of it. And then there's also like an investigative journalist part where basically I haven't watched a lot of it, but it looks like they go to a place where you shouldn't be going to, and they take a camera and they film a guy throwing one of those canisters of like, I'm not even sure what the canister is, where it's like smoke coming off the end of the canister, where I don't know if it's just it's supposed to like, I guess, keep a crowd from forming, or it's a smoke bomb, or it's filled with nerve gas, or it just really looks cool. Like, maybe there's like a Vice investigates Vice investigating what the fuck that canister of smoke is. I haven't checked them there. But I like Vice. I think it's cool. Because the other thing is that it publishes essays like that Bungalow 89. So I wanted this piece that I'm about to read to you to be on Vice. And Vice responded to me with total silence. Absolute, complete silence. They wanted nothing to do with it. So this is the first chapter, episode 1, in the Vice rejection saga. It's a 5,000-word piece on Bret Easton Ellis' film The Canyons. It was never published except for on my own website in October of last year. I basically just, no one would take it. You'll see the anger about that in the piece. So I put it on my site. I went to bed. I wake up the next morning and people are like actually buying my book and communicating with me online. Like the one thing that I was pushing for all this time was actually happening. And I was like, oh no, someone with my name committed an atrocious act, and now the news probably reported it was me. Because I'm not capable of any of those things like that, but if you interviewed everyone else, they'd be like, he's a lone wolf, he's a lone wolf, yeah, Tom was a lone wolf, yeah, he's a lone wolf. Like that, there's no way around it. No one's gonna be like, yeah, that Tom, shaking hands, kissing babies, a real senator. No, they'll be like, Tom had a fucking weird podcast where he read his sad, sad Vice rejections, which is what this is. But basically, when I woke up the next day, I had found out that Bret Easton Ellis tweeted about the piece, and he linked the piece. And now this was like, all right, in that James Franco piece, when he's reading all those Salinger things to the character known as Lindsay Lohan? Well, I watched that Salinger documentary, which is just a bunch of horse shit. Like, don't waste your time. It's just like a guy one time saying like, hey, I went to Salinger's his mailbox and I stood there. Salinger got his mail. Looks like he had some bills, maybe a Victoria's Secret catalog. I was like, hey, could I borrow that? He was like, no, get away. And that's literally like all the stories in the Salinger documentary is just Salinger getting his mail. Like, if I was Salinger, I definitely would exploit that hermitage and people, like, making these trips to my house, and I would just have total Bill Murray moments, because no one's going to believe that. No one's going to believe, like, I went to J.D. Salinger's house, and he took a shit on my head while he was in a hot air balloon. No one's going to believe that. No one's going to be like, oh, let's put that part in the documentary. No, they'll just talk about, like, his mail or whatever. So, I think Salinger wasted opportunities, but we'll see when maybe the rest of the books come out. If it's like Holden Caulfield, book 14 in the Catcher in the Rye series, where Holden shits on a guy's head from a hot air balloon. We don't know. We're waiting for the books to come out. But anyways, in that Salinger documentary, there was a point where Salinger met Hemingway in World War II, and he's like, hey, here's my work. And Hemingway didn't fight him, so that was a good sign. And this was my Salinger Hemingway moment where I don't care about what my readers think about the books, where I would write them regardless, but the fact is that I wrote an entire piece about Post-Empire, and the guy who created Post-Empire acknowledged it, which is like, that's the one reader I do care about. And he wasn't like, this is dog shit. He was like, this is kind of okay. And kind of okay is a hell of a lot better than what I got from Vice. And I'm still holding that grudge, as you can see. And if you like this, and you can check back next week, and I'll read the Shia LaBeouf piece where Vice also said absolutely nothing. Pretended like I didn't exist. So, without further ado, this is a piece from 2013. It's called In the Canyons of a Fallen Empire, and it's about Bret Easton Ellis' film, The Canyons. In the Canyons of a Fallen Empire by James Reagan. In Bret Easton Ellis's 2005 mock memoir / Stephen King homage, Lunar Park, the character, Bret Easton Ellis, notes, "It was almost as if the novel itself didn't matter anymore. Publishing a shiny, book-like object was simply an excuse for parties and glamour, and good-looking authors reading finely honed minimalism to students who would listen with rapt, slack-jawed admiration, thinking, I could do that. I could be them." And now, yeah, they can do that. They can be that author. Sure, there's no expense account for the parties anymore, but publishing a book-like object is exceedingly simple, and now, the novel truly doesn't matter at all. You can get anything printed, just upload it to CreateSpace and wait for someone dumb enough to buy it. Now, you're an author. Now, you're a writer. That's what I did, after being rejected. Vice said no to this piece. So did the Daily Beast, and The Atlantic, and a bunch of other sites I don't read. I wrote this piece knowing that it would end up on the internet, no matter what. The options for placing a short, snarky, semi-abrasive essay are nearly endless at this point. Some site, somewhere on the internet, would probably be like, okay, fine, stop emailing us, we'll run your piece. The website could be Casey Anthony's celebrity baby blog. It doesn't matter. After the most humiliating moment of my life, when Thought Catalog passed on my essay, I had two choices. Kill myself because Thought Catalog turned me down, and that's like getting turned down by the girl in town who hands out pita flyers in Starbucks. Or I could put the essay up on tjamesreagan.com. So, here it is. Probably just as many people will read it here as they would have somewhere else. For film, this type of fairness is new. It's different. One of the new steps towards film catching up to the novel is the Kickstarter film. Bret Easton Ellis's The Canyons is one of the first films of the Kickstarter era to land in theaters. To watch The Canyons, I used the Premium on Demand or Still in Theaters option that iTunes offers. It seems like all Ryan Gosling movies come out in this option now. I remember intoxicatingly ranting through the runtime of whatever the last Gosling movie was, but I'm not sure if the movie's quality was at fault or if my drinking problem was the issue. My first sober experience with Premium on Demand, when I rented Bret Easton Ellis's The Canyons, turned out great. They shouldn't call it Premium on Demand because my other option was leaving in New Jersey, getting on New Jersey Transit, then cabbing to some place referred to as the IFC Center. I'm not totally sure that the IFC Center is a real thing. Like, I imagine getting there and it's just the IFC corporate office where I have to sit next to Mark Maron on a sofa as some intern brings over their MacBook so we can watch the movie on an 11-inch screen, and there's no popcorn, so the only concessions are break room coffee, and every time Mark takes a sip of the coffee he exclaims, "Pow!" then follows it up with, "I just shit my pants." And then when the credits roll, he gives me an Audible.com coupon code as an apology for interrupting the film. The above scenario is the entire reason why VOD is the answer. If I can buy The Canyons in the comfort of my own run-down apartment, I don't have to deal with 1. My Newark train stop, which seems to be filled with guys who just need $2 to get on my train. I made a mistake. I partied with the wrong crowd last night, and now I just need $2 to get home. 2. The creepy guy in the theater sitting next to me, and I'm constantly wondering, pow, did this guy just shit his pants? Is that a 42-ounce coffee? Does concession even sell coffee here? How the hell did he sneak that in? Or 3. The $14 round-trip New Jersey Transit ticket, the $15 cab ride, the $11 movie ticket. All of that is a large chunk of the $100 in revenue for some bullshit nothing piece that gets sold on the internet about whatever movie I'm seeing. Premium on Demand is the post-Empire answer for film. Ah, there's that term. Here's where the total shitstorm avalanche happens, and this essay turns into a hodgepodge of regurgitated half-thoughts. What is post-Empire? The Empire? It's over? Will it ever strike back? Kickstarter? Other people's money? They pay for the film? Zach Braff's nose job has been kickstarted? Sweet perks. Lilo? Rehab? Crazy on set? Really late?
wasting shitty regular people Kickstarter money while she parties with the equally shitty Lady Gaga? James Deen? Porno? Sex in a lady's vagina? His wiener in two ladies' vaginas? Not his wife. Don't understand. Doing sex on not his wife. Bret said naughty characters. Only 140. Still offended. So offended. Such offense. Women directors. Jezebel angry. Glee tweet. Jezebel still angry. Innocuous tweet about seemingly nothing. Jezebel still somehow angry. Not even sure how they fit into the equation on that one.
The post-Empire reviews of The Canyon seemed obsessed with everything but the film. It's a typical reaction by people too insulated or too confused to confront what they're being presented with. Bret Easton Ellis defined post-Empire in his Daily Beast essay on Charlie Sheen. When the essay came out, I'd just finished my 9th novel. Actually, manuscript. Novels are things you can buy for money. Manuscripts are things that are rejected by every agent you send them to. The rejections proclaim your work to be the unsympathetic manifesto of a complete sociopath. The manuscripts stay hidden on your hard drive like those James Deen movies you downloaded after you found that good Firefox extension that lets you save all your favorite FLVs from Xvideo and Xhamster. I could never sell my manuscripts because I couldn't define my writing style. I tried referring to it as trash fiction, but the agreement only seemed to hold on the trash part. After Bret defined post-Empire, something clicked. It was a genre that perfectly fit what I was doing, and, after lots of drafts, on Lindsay Lohan's birthday, in 2013, I released my debut novel, Famous for Nothing. It was a post-Empire novel about socialites, and Lindsay might have been amused for the novel, depending on if you're a lawyer who's listening to this or not. I wrote Famous for Nothing when I was 24. From ages 23 to 24, my life consisted of reading celebrity blogs, apologizing on behalf of Britney Spears, and watching The Hills with my friend Amanda, a suicide girl with a heart of gold. When The Hills was on, the post-Empire speed hadn't become a demand yet. The season finale of The Hills Season 2 was legitimately Spencer and Heidi move into an apartment. In the post-Empire world, the apartment would also need to be designed in tandem with an HGTV special where, after a commercial break, it's hinted that a Mexican day worker might have sexually assaulted Heidi. Then, later in the show, it's alleged that the mural of the Hollywood Hills in the guest bedroom may actually be a picture of the Appalachian Trail. This post-Empire speed issue even affected Bret's 2010 novel, Imperial Bedrooms, that arrived at the end of Empire. When I read the very good novel, I remember getting a feeling that some of the portions were incredibly dated, even as I was reading the novel the day it came out. At one point, Clay checks Rain Turner's MySpace page. Even 4 years ago, I was like, the only time someone's MySpace page is checked now is when the news wants to find out more information about the guy who left a pipe bomb in the Mall of America. It's one thing to define a time period, and it's another to deliver instantly dated references that lead the reader asking, is this actually a period piece? Is the MySpace era even technically a period? If so, please don't bring me back there. These instantly dated references made me go back and change my own style. The world is moving too fast to be timely, so you have to be vague. Here's an example. In the first draft of Famous for Nothing, a 450-page manuscript originally called Social Heavy, the following appears. LA is amazing. It's always hot and there are a ton of famous people here. London celebrates. Toby squints for a moment, then asks, the same thing could be said about hell, though, couldn't it? I don't know. I've never been. I guess we'll find out someday, Toby says. Right, and when we end up there, we'll need to get in contact with each other, London suggests, snatching Toby's BlackBerry, quickly typing in her number, then calling her own phone. I don't think they have BlackBerries down there, Toby says. Yuck, that really does sound like hell, London says, then hands Toby back his phone. Blackberries. If a world without Blackberries is hell, welcome to hell. BlackBerry just posted $1 billion loss. I had to go through the entire manuscript and post-Empire proof it after this. I mean, I'm not putting in vague words like, she snatched her digital communication device, so that generations from now won't be taken out of the story. I merely made changes so that by the time the book could be purchased, everything happening didn't feel like Clay listening to the Fray autoplay on a MySpace page as he jealously reviews Rain Turner's top 8. I've defined my work by the label post-Empire. I've damn near plagiarized from Bret Easton Ellis more times than I can count. I've masturbated to some of James Deen's greatest hits, his greatest being the Nicole Ray video. I've written 11 essays on Lindsay Lohan, and I'm still not even close to being sick of her. I've seen the Canyons, and unlike all those people writing throwaway articles on the Canyons, this is a human being who actually sat down and watched the movie, multiple times. And yes, I liked it. I ran an HDMI cable from my ailing laptop to my TV, and I started watching the Canyons after iTunes had it 50% downloaded. The start time of the movie, about 9 p.m. on August 2nd, was merely selected by the time the pizza arrived. The film starts and the actors are immediately confronting you for what a scumbag piece of shit you are. Each actor faces the camera. The actors look you in the eyes. You enjoyed watching me fuck, didn't you? You enjoyed watching me fall apart, didn't you? Now you can watch those things happen again for $7.48. I'm not being played. I'm playing a character and I'm playing you. You'll sit there and you'll watch for that very reason. In the opening scene, there are 4 people at the table. Nolan Funk, some dude who stomps around the puddle of HIV, Glee. James Deen, some dude who gets tested monthly for HIV. Lindsay Lohan, a girl who's villainized more than HIV. And some actress who seemed to be too old for the part that she's playing and probably is offended by this paragraph. The first thing I was curious about was, can James Deen act? And the answer? Yeah, he can. James Deen is James Deen if James Deen knew how it would end for him and he wanted to expend every last bit of life he'd been given before that Porsche pulled up. The second thing I was curious about is, can this old dude, Paul Schrader, direct this film? I've never seen American Gigolo. I've only seen Taxi Driver once and I found it unsettling. I wasn't unsettled by the movie, I was more unsettled by the fact that I was turned on by a young Jodie Foster and the implications of that were too heavy to address. Paul Schrader wasn't on my radar, I think, primarily because he hasn't been on anyone's radar for a while. Does The Canyons look like a film by a man who's, I don't know, insert old person age here? No. It could just as easily be the arrival of a new talent as it is the resurgence of an old one. I heard an interview with Paul where he said he probably wasn't going to kickstart another movie. I think this is a misstep. I think he's in his element here. He took this clusterfuck he was given and he got a movie on VOD that works. That's a feat of direction right there. Schrader's shining moment was a scene out on the poured concrete and steel-cabled balcony of the impressive mansion they shot in. Lindsay and James's cat-and-mouse game of mistrust is captured perfectly by Schrader, even when it wobbles into the Hills territory. The one, I suppose it's a nod to the Hills, seems to have been put in the film when Lindsay is having lunch at a side street restaurant and, suddenly, a UPS truck comes barreling through the intersection and, for a second, it looks like the truck's going to plow right into Lilo's table. I'm thinking it had to be a nod to Joel McHale in The Soup for the never-ending CGI'd gory death scenes that they would manipulate out of Hills footage. I still long for the days when Heidi and Spencer are eating out on a lovely pier, then a cruise missile is CGI'd into the frame and an explosion is superimposed over them. The third factor that came along as baggage for the Canyons is the scary proposition that if it fails horribly, will Lindsay ever work again? Is Lindsay back? Read a text from a friend when I told him I was watching the Canyons. My answer? Yes, she is. Lindsay is in top form, but she's so delicate in the film as well. There are 2 points in the movie where she asserts herself. During a meeting with one of James's exes, and during a foursome where she takes control and makes a guy blow James. But the rest of the movie, she's so fragile. She does a great job with the character, but the problem people are going to have is this a character, or is this Lindsay? This was intended to be Lindsay's comeback film, yet, surprisingly, it becomes James Deen's film. Yep, the great Lindsay Lohan comeback vehicle was stolen by a guy who everyone talked down on, not because of his conduct behind the scenes, but because of his conduct on screen in all of his other work. Before the Canyons, I honestly didn't get James Deen's crossover hype. He seemed to have a fanatical following on, of all places, Tumblr. Tumblr girls are many things. Understanding is not one of them. I've seen Tumblr girls tear apart other girls for just insinuating a rape joke. I've seen James Deen in a kink.com video where he and his friends viciously gang up on a woman because she gave James a D+ on a paper. Tumblr seems okay with this. Why are they okay with it? I'm guessing because... This section was extracted because I don't want to face the wrath of Tumblr. When does James Deen announce himself in the canyons? The opening table scene. When does James Deen transcend the canyons? In his therapist's office. At over an hour and 20 minutes into an hour and 40-minute movie, James sits in his therapist's office, his neon Nikes nervously jackhammering up and down. The scene follows Nolan Funk's best scene in the film, and based on pacing, this Christian scene should be low-key, muted, sterile. It could have been, but James turns it into something else. After recapping control issues that resulted during one of the 2 flashes of Lindsay's Tara asserting herself, James's Christian complains that he feels like an actor. Then James peers out from under his eyebrows with a Kubrickian smile, and Bret's daddy issues monologue becomes important and pumping and necessary. Christian complains of having no control. His therapist reminds him he has no control. Then, in a scene where another director would have had him kick in the door, Christian arrives at his yoga instructor's home where he takes control and remains in control until a body is left on the floor. Christian returns to his mansion and Lindsay's Tara is ready to leave. This is when Lindsay takes control of the film from James. This is the scene where she breaks down. This is the scene where she looks hopeless against the machine she's trapped in. This is the scene that provides Lindsay her redemption. Christian no longer has control. Christian forces Tara to provide him an alibi. This is a sharp contrast from the ending of Bret's Imperial Bedrooms, where Blair willingly provides Clay an alibi for the murder of Julian Wells, and Clay merely walks away from her, unwilling to accept the help of someone because he is the one who writes the endings, not Blair. She can't create fiction. That is Clay's specialty. In the canyons, Tara provides an alibi. Maybe because she's afraid, maybe because she's too damn tired, maybe because she doesn't give a shit. In Lindsay Lohan's last scene, we find her back at the table, having drinks with another couple. Lindsay repeating her mistakes? Maybe. The canyon's ending arrives without warning, and in its final moments, we zoom in on Nolan Funk in the corner, alone, and again, he looks you right in the eyes and the swelling music cuts off abruptly. It's over. The film is complete. This is where the real drama began. The large-scale rejection of my piece, The Atlantic's "Thanks, but we'll pass," Vice's silence, then their publishing of the least engaging piece Bret has ever written, Wonderland magazine's disinterest because I didn't mention any of my lesbian high-fashion fanfic. It's all to be expected when you review the rest of the articles written on the canyons. Nearly every reviewer wrote a piece that seemingly mirrored Bret's uninspired review he was forced to write for Vice due to a Kickstarter obligation. None of these reviewers seemed to be remotely interested in the canyons. None of the reviewers seemed familiar with the professional work of any of the parties involved in the film. None of the reviewers had particularly interesting insights regarding the film. They had a single job: create web traffic. Maybe they did that. Who knows? Who cares? Is that what we're working for now? Web traffic? Does the overweight, perpetually single English major college girl who puts together a 25 ways to know you're a 90s kid feel any satisfaction when the massive amounts of drones ascend upon that piece to be like, yeah, unicorn folders, I owned a folder, look at us, bonded together, by folders. I suppose it's transporting, but it's rolling in nostalgia and creates some sad celebration that my boring life has granted me so many years to own folders and think about folders and reminisce about folders. If this piece was about dolphin folders, it absolutely would be 1,000 times more popular. But with who? The same people who rushed out to see Despicable Me 2? Appealing to that demo brings trucks of money and a fan base of the complainy and suburban. The post-Empire advertising campaign for the Canyons consisted of James promoting the film via his blog, which is frequently engaging, funny, hot, post-Empire in its openness, and refreshing in its sincerity. The blog even lets users vote if something is lame. It's democracy in action. It makes the James Dean for President t-shirts in his web store all the more tempting to buy. Expertly navigating the Farrah Abrams and Lindsay Lohan hype, James is the best part of the film and also its best advocate. In a loose and fun appearance on Carolla's podcast, then wrapping things up in Venice, James should be supremely proud of both his craft and his fulfillment of his obligations to the movie. One can only hope that he doesn't view the entire mainstream experience as a dolphin folder circle jerk, and he continues to explore all his options, which is normally his specialty. I'm not even sure why we're still using the term mainstream when less people have seen Despicable Me 2 than they've seen Despicable James in action. If this is a popularity contest judged by web traffic, James wins. Again. Paul Schrader promoted this film with a Facebook page. Small contests like, take a picture of you watching the canyons, seemed nice, safe, cute, but that's none of the things that the film was, so it felt all so boring. What Paul should have done is leak the original cut of the Grindr date scene. He should have provided a director's commentary on the New York Times piece, going through each part of the piece and explaining exactly what happened. What he should have done is leak the bait script so that we could have insight into the project that started this partnership. Maybe they're saving the bait script for the next movie. Given how much I enjoyed the canyons, show me where to throw my $20 for a DVD of Bait by fall 2014, and I'm in. Bret promoted the canyons by, Twitter? I saw him on HuffPo Live, but he seemed to want Braxton Pope to continue talking forever, and Braxton seemed to want this too. There was a Reddit AMA with questions like, so did Patrick do all of those things? And every question could have been answered if someone just Googled Bret's excellent Paris Review interview. Bret treated the Canyons project on a scale that it deserved. He could have done more, he didn't. Deal with it. Lindsay promoted the film by going on Oprah. Oprah said, Lindsay, don't go to Venice. Everyone on those awful E! shows said, Lindsay, don't go to Venice. The judge at whatever case she was probably going through said, Lindsay, don't go to Venice. Whoever that creepy old-looking lawyer is who replaced Sean Chapman probably said, do you think this suit will look weird on camera? Are pinstripes disorienting? So, when Lindsay didn't show up in Venice, of course Bret and Paul acted like it was a total shock. Lindsay flaked. Maybe, I suppose, in a way. She didn't show up to an international festival with giant parties and awful journalists. That is how she's going to get her life back on track. By doing precisely what got her to the point that doing a Kickstarter movie for back-end points seemed like a viable career choice. Lindsay didn't have to promote the movie by doing anything beyond existing. Paul's triumphant, today I deleted the TMZ app from my phone and iPad, free at last. Update on the Facebook page is exactly what everyone does with Lindsay. For a guy who seemed willing to assist James Dean in reaching a new level in his career, Paul seems proud to look at his female lead just as another transaction, another De Niro money clip, something from the set that can be discarded after there's a promise of something more valuable. Lindsay is Lindsay because she's Lindsay, and it's not easy to change who you are when the people around you are constantly changing as well. A constant wave of people moving in and out of your life, feeding, then leaving, is not going to leave you mentally healthy. The final, incredibly Empire conclusion to this whole year-long journey was Paul Schrader's boo-hoo CrimeiaRiver.mp3 middle school girl Facebook status. He complained that Lindsay wasn't comfortable working with James. Okay, cool. Didn't see that on the screen. He complained that she wouldn't give an interview to Film Comment. Holy shit, don't alienate the 7 subscribers of Film Comment. How else will we find comments on films besides 30% of the internet which provides comments on films? Most laughably, Paul complained about Lindsay not going to Venice for the Venice Film Festival. Apparently, he's so distanced from reality that he doesn't realize the Venice Film Festival exclusively exists so that people like James Franco who don't have the physical dexterity to suck their own dick will have the ability to practice self-love for the benefit of no one but themselves. You know how many of my friends talked about the Venice Film Festival? 0. Remember which movie won the Venice Film Festival over the Canyons? I'll wait. Remember all those past winners of the Venice Film Festival, like... Yeah. As a project that started as such a fuck you to the standard way of doing things, it essentially ended proving that even people involved with the projects pushing the boundaries are so out of touch with how the world works at the edge of 2014 that we're just reverting back to the old ways. James gets it. Bret gets it. Lindsay doesn't have to get it because she's been relevant every year for the past decade with no signs of slowing down or declining. Now, we've seen the film. Now, the movie has had its premiere. Now, Post-Empire has a solid, respectable entry in the new film movement. If nothing else, the Canyons will appear on a BuzzFeed list. You know you're a 2010s kid if you contributed to the Canyons Kickstarter so you could see Lindsay Lohan fuck James Deen. With 2014 upon us, the Canyons stands as an example of the new way things will be done. Don't worry if you can't let go of the past, at least you can go cry about it on Facebook. We'll be focused on the next one. Not the last one. Your empire is over, dude. That was my Canyons piece. That was the first piece that was rejected by Vice, and I posted it online. You can read that at tjamesreagan.com. Also, you can go there, and if you're interested in the Famous for Nothing book I referenced, or Empire Waste, my new novel, both those are on sale for $3.99 there, so tjamesreagan.com, and check back next week for my number 2 Vice rejected piece on Shia LaBeouf, 2014 Man of the Year. Thank you for listening to the T. James Reagan podcast.